Good morning, sunshines. I'm super happy to have you here today. Today we've got Emily. I'm super excited to talk to her, and we are going to hear all about her crochet journey story. So, Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi everyone. My name's Emily. I've been crocheting about 17 years now. My background, I grew up on a farm that my family has owned for, I think I'm the seventh or eighth generation. Funny little story on that. It used to be a dairy farm. And then in the recent years, with myself being in 4 H and my siblings, we did market pigs, market sheep, beef. And right now that we're all aged out, it is just a beef operation that we've been selling the beef to our community since COVID started.
Oh, that's awesome.
Myself, I used to actually, can't think now. I used to walk over to my grandparents every day because there was a house between my parents and my grandparents' farm. So I would just mosey on over up through the hayfield and hang out with my grandmother every weekend I had the chance to. And you'd catch me being in the garden. At one point, we would be watching Days of Our Lives and I Love Lucy to give a little background to who I am and my personality. And then at one point, she learned to knit. She took a class, and that was kind of where my crocheting started, was from her.
Wow.
But
So wait a minute. So your grandma wasn't a lifelong knitter. It was just,
no.
that's kind of cool. That's
Yep.
kind of cool. And I got to be honest, you don't look old enough to have been crocheting for How old were you when you started?
Probably 8 or 9. My birthday's actually tomorrow. I'm turning 26.
Oh, happy birthday! It's early. By the time y'all see this, we will have passed it. So we'll just celebrate a little bit. Happy birthday, girl. I'm
Thank
excited.
you.
I'm excited. How does it feel to be 26? Almost.
Well, it's a venture, that's for sure. Having two toddlers seems like just yesterday I was not having kids running around my
That's
house.
right.
Um,
They
my
definitely
youngest
turn things upside down.
My youngest is actually up here with me right now. She
Oh,
just had a
cute.
bath, so she's digging through stuff.
That's cool.
But
That's cool. And you got
mhm,
two girls, right? And I know
yes,
you got your, whew, that's a lot.
yeah. My
That's a
oldest,
lot.
she's 4 right now, and the youngest is 2.
Honey, you are a busy girl.
Oh yeah,
You are a busy girl. So
being pregnant during COVID was not fun.
that's right, huh?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it was nice in the hospital. I didn't have family bickering on who was there and who could or could
True.
or could not go.
This is true. I
That
guess there's
was the only
positive.
upside to it.
Sometimes you got to find that little
Oh
speck of
yeah,
positivity just so that you can
oh
make
yeah,
it through all because life has a way of just throwing.
oh yeah.
It's like, have you ever been in a snowball fight? Where do you? And I'm not sure where geographically. Do you get snow where you're at?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm actually an hour outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yes, you get snow. So you know what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
talking about when you get in a snowball fight and then there's those
Oh
people
yeah.
that just bombard you, and you're like, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what life does sometimes. It just
Yep.
constantly throwing snowballs, and yeah, it's not so fun sometimes. Not so fun. Wow.
Yep.
So you've got your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. How long has that been going on?
So I probably started it almost a year ago and wanted to push myself to do it every week, but starting out I was like, I'll do a video this week, and I might have pushed it off for another 2 weeks to do my next video starting out. But my goal was to try and get people coming in, but not do it so much that I was running out of what to talk about.
Right.
And right now I'm sitting just under 50 subscribers. And in the last, I want to say 5 months, I've been uploading weekly now, just talking about like yarn I've been buying and projects I'm working on, because I don't have the necessary tools yet to do like tutorials like I've been planning on doing.
That's all right.
Funny enough, you've asked about that. I wanted to actually broadcast my crochet business for years because my family, we would set things up where I sold at one of my cousin's storefronts. I had a little, probably 5 foot section of shelving that she put my scarves and dishcloths on.
Oh, wow.
And she was only open for a couple years, but also around that time, actually, funny enough, the same year I showed a market steer at our local fair, I had appendicitis.
Uh,
And the community came together. They took care of my steer while I was at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. But I came back. I was treated very well. Everyone was bombarding me with gifts left and right and hugs and well wishes. And then a few weeks after that, I just started knitting like crazy because they had given me knitting needles and some yarn at the hospital. So I was setting all of those projects aside so I could give back to the nurses that took care of me for those few days.
that's awesome. So you knit
So,
and crochet.
yes,
Oh,
I learned to knit first because of my grandmother. When she learned to knit, hanging out with her quite often, it was just something to keep your hands busy while you're sitting down watching I Love Lucy and
that's right.
all of that.
All that good
And
stuff.
oh yeah. And at one point she bought crochet hooks and books on learning to crochet, but she never got past a foundation chain. I don't know if it just confused her or she gave up or what, but I taught myself to crochet and then I tried teaching her and even just showing her, she didn't understand how to turn your work or how to do a single crochet versus a double. So we kind of gave up on helping her and she just stuck with her knitting and I stuck with my crochet and we left it at that.
That's cool. So you prefer crochet over knitting?
Yes, I don't know if it's just easier for me or what it is, but I always found that crocheting, my tensions were a lot easier to work with than knitting because growing up, I'd always lose stitches on my knitting needles, or my tensions would be too tight. I couldn't move them from one side to the other. Or when I would make diamond shaped dishcloths, I always hated how the first few rows looked spaced out, where the rest of the dishcloth was really knit close together, laying on top of one another like it's supposed to. I always kind of set it aside and said, you know what? I've tried fixing this. It's not working for me. I'm just, bye bye.
I'm done. We're going to try this over here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really neat. So you make dishcloths and things like you're not an amigurumi maker then.
No, I tried it once and it just doesn't seem like a good fit for me to make art. Yeah, I can't say that word. I always liked making scarves, hats, the dishcloths.
Okay.
I've made Afghans. My first Afghan I made started out with a loop and then I worked in rounds until I eventually made it into like a granny square. And then kept working in those rounds until it got large enough for a bed, at least a twin, and gave it to an ex-boyfriend at the time. And then when we broke up, he gave it back. So I frogged the
Oh,
whole
wow.
thing.
You
But
frogged it real. Oh, well. Okay.
oh yeah,
Moving on
I
to better
repurposed.
things.
So that Afghan, actually, funny enough, he bought me yarn for, I forget if it was Valentine's Day or my birthday. And I was like, I'm going to repurpose this and give it back to you. And then he decided, you know what, you need the blanket more than I do. So here you go.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
constant, a back and forth constant.
It's a pass it back hot potato kind of thing. That's cool. That's crazy.
But hey, free
Who
yarn
really
is
gave
free
it back?
yarn.
Wow. So what did you use it for? Being nosy now.
Even remember, I don't think I have the yarn anymore. Probably made another Afghan at one point or another and split them up because the colors didn't really match to begin with. They were all very dark colors. Like I think he gave me a dark teal. The one was an army green, and then there was a maroon.
Okay.
So it looked nice together, but at the same time, I was like, why am I putting these colors together? They don't really match. There's no theme to it.
What colors do you generally tend to kind of gravitate towards?
For me, it's more like earth tones, like your browns, greens, oranges, and some of the darker reds. I don't really like neons, but if someone asks me, hey, if I buy the yarn, can you make me this? I'll go ahead and do it because they've already paid for the yarn.
That's
I
right.
might only ask for another $5 just for my time in it to make it. But no,
Okay.
I had my colors done. I think I was 15. My other grandmother took me to get them done, and we found out I only have one shade of my favorite color, which happens to be purple, and lots of blues, lots of greens, browns, and I think one really dark shade of yellow in there somewhere. But other than that, nothing bright.
Okay, so you lost me. What do you mean you got your colors done? What does that mean?
Colors that match your skin tone. So whenever you hold a piece of cloth up to your skin, let's say I have like plum and then I have like a light shade of teal. The plum I might gravitate more towards than the light teal, just because it brings out like the color in my eyes and my hair and all those features. Whereas
Okay.
if I'm holding like white, I get washed out.
Okay, that makes sense. My mom used to work for a company called Beauty for All Seasons, and so they
Aw.
did that color stuff for like makeup. I obviously don't
Mhm.
wear makeup much, but my mom was
I
totally
don't
into
either.
it. Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. Wow. So aside from that's just really neat. So do you sell online?
I am in the process of getting some stuff set aside and figuring out what I want to sell, because I
Okay.
really want to try and stay away from Etsy because Etsy seems busy aside from fees on it to pay to
Ye-
have the shops.
Yeah,
So I'm looking to actually build my own website and have that attached to like my Instagram, my YouTube, and even my Facebook.
that's
Because
cool.
back then when I was underage, I was running a Facebook page, but it wasn't necessarily busy. It was mainly friends and family that I had on there that would get to see what I'm doing, where my items are going. At one point, I did want to do farmers markets, but then when I'm asked, I always kind of like, I don't really want to pay to have a table, or I don't have it in my budget right now. And
Right.
funny enough, there's an event we have called Dairy Railroad Days, because the town I live in used to be very busy with the railroads. I think there was 4 or 8 tracks side by side back then in like the
Oh,
late
wow.
1800s.
Yeah, that's a
And
lot.
since then, I think we're down to 2 tracks side by side underneath our bridge that actually runs on this side of me over here. And so that event, there's a lot of people, even out of state, that come around and they'll shop at the local businesses. And there's booths that get set up for like food and other vendors. And I've been thinking whether or not I want to post signs out along the busy route near my house and say, hey, come over to this address. There's a table set up with this crochet business. I really want to do it, but at the same time, I don't want to have to sit out there and babysit all day because the
And you
road I'm on isn't necessarily as busy. But
that's kind of a
so
catch-22. I think you should do it. Like, even if
I think
nothing
it would
happens, I mean, it's definitely an experience for
be.
sure.
I mean, heck, if I do it on a Sunday, I live between 2 churches, so you have
There you
all traffic at least.
there you go. Just do it every day, every Sunday, right there. Advertise, be good. Like, at least they'll know where you're at.
Yes, yes,
That
yep,
would be really cool. How lucky is that? Because you know they're busy on Sunday.
yeah.
You know they're busy on Sunday. Wow. What's your favorite stitch? Or combination of stitches, I guess you could say. Either or.
I don't know that I really have one. I mean, right now, as of lately, I've been getting into Tunisian crochet because I tried it probably 5 years ago and failed miserably because I had the curl going on that everyone hates. And I set that aside at one point and I was like, yeah, I'll bring it back because I started watching TL Yarn Crafts, Tony.
Uh-huh.
Her tutorials on how to get rid of that curl and everything. I was like, wait, okay, that makes sense. Because back when I was learning crochet, YouTube didn't really have all these different channels of crochet and knitting. So I was very limited on just looking at pictures and books.
Yeah, YouTube's really kind of exploded as far as crochet content
Mhm.
just in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's something I've wanted to try, but girl, I am nervous. I don't know. I don't think that I'm cool like that. Like I just don't know if I can do it. And
Yeah.
I am such a perfectionist. I am
I was
bad.
looking to see if I had one in my pencil holder, but I don't. I actually inherited a bunch of Tunisian crochet hooks, like the old ones that are probably like this long and look like a knitting needle on the bottom end.
Oh wow.
I inherited those and other knitting needles, not so much crochet hooks, because I had a great grandmother who was crafty. She used to crochet slippers for family for every Christmas.
Wow.
So,
See, and that blows me away. That's something else I want to try, but I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I think just stay in your lane, Marty. Just stay in your lane.
well, the slippers, I actually have some of my earlier videos. One of them's a little over an hour long just because back then I was like, I'm not even going to bother editing. I'm just going to go with the flow, throw them on here and see if I even get any traffic.
Right.
And what I was doing was referencing one of the slippers and then crocheting new one
Okay.
and writing down each round. And I have it written down somewhere. I just never typed it up because I figured, you know what, if I can offer that to the community, they
That's
maybe like to
cool.
have that pattern.
I'm
But
gonna have to go find that video. Do you remember what you named it? What the title of it was?
ooh, something along the lines of my great grandmother's slippers or something like that. Because there is one video I have over an hour long, and then the other one I think I did after was like 23 minutes. So I had it split up a little bit, but not very well.
Okay. Do you mind if I link that?
No, not at all. That's fine.
All right. So, y'all listen, I'm going to find that video and I'm going to link both Emily's channel and that video because I want to watch that video. I'm not going to lie. That's kind of selfish. I know. I'm going to share it with y'all. But yeah, I think we got to watch that video. I want to watch that video. That'd be cool. I like taking stuff because knit and crochet are very similar, but they're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same. I don't know that I'm coordinated enough to work with two needles because I fumble a lot with just
Mm-hmm.
one hook, and they're not even pointy. Put somebody's eye
No.
out with the thing. And I find it very interesting and also intriguing that you were taking something that was knitted and trying to figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to crochet it because they look completely different. In
Yeah.
my opinion. Some people say they look the same. I don't think so. I don't think they look the same. I don't know.
No.
Unless it's Tunisian, because Tunisian does look like knit, honestly. In
Yeah.
a lot of ways. It does. That's cool. Yeah, I gotta go watch that video. So, what is your whole of all of it? Because I know it's a lot of years. You've been crocheting a lot longer than I have. I've only been crocheting for 2 years. November will be 2 years. But
Oh, gee.
all of the time that you've been crocheting, can you think of any project that you've completed that is your absolute favorite? Like you're super proud of it,
Oof. Well,
or a couple even.
right now it's not finished, but I am working on finally actually making my own pattern, which is going to be a hooded scarf, and I'm making it fall themed, so it's going to have little itty bitty pumpkins in it. And I don't know how well it'll show through, but like this, and then it has these at the bottom. And
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah,
go back
that's
through and sew
cute.
stems, but working on that. And actually, how I even got the idea last night, mind you, to start this, I wrote it down last night and all that. I made a hooded scarf for my grandmother that I lost a few years ago. And when I made it, she was going through chemo treatments because she had pancreatic cancer. And they told her she had a 5% chance of surviving. So when her hair started thinning out, I said, Graham, you need something to cover up because she had one of those puffy jackets with no hood. And I tried reading a pattern for as young as I was. I could not understand it, could not understand the abbreviations yet, none of that. So I was like, okay, what is this? My head hurt so bad I had a migraine.
No.
So I frogged that of what I did have done. I just went on my merry way and just did whatever I could come up with. And it turned into the scarf swirled around itself. And then I had just I guess like a flap of fabric that just kind of rolls over your head, but not entirely. It doesn't even cover your ears that well. And I had it a few months ago until I threw it away because at that time I threw it away. I was like, I don't need to hold on to this. And the reason I threw it away, we lost my grandmother in a house fire because she had dementia and she turned on her gas stove. But I held on to the scarf because it was one of the few things crafted that didn't get ruined on the first floor. So I held on to it, and that winter and the last year I wore it anytime I went on fire calls, since I'm a volunteer.
Ooh, we need to
Anytime we
touch
did
on that. Yeah.
sales, anytime we did sub sales, I'd wear it underneath my jacket if I had it on. And last few months, I said, you know what? I don't need it. But last night I got to thinking about it. I'm like, how many fall themed scarves are there? Thank you, Lucy.
Very
And
few, if any.
yeah, and I was like, it gets cold in the fall. It starts getting cold then. Why not something fall themed? And last night, as I'm writing it out, I'm like, thank you, Graham. Thank you, angels. Like the whole nine
Yes.
yards. And I'm not even that Christian. I barely go to church, but I still carry Bibles with me. And so, yeah, I just started writing out the pattern and I've been working at it. Actually, already frogged half of it today because I somehow added stitches. So I was like, no, I need to back up. But my grandmother was always the supportive person for everyone in the family. And so, other than this project I'm building, I owe a lot to her because without having gotten close to her, I would never have gotten into crochet or gardening or just being an overall better person. She was a retired nurse from one of the state hospitals nearby. And actually, whenever we had her funeral a few days after Christmas, I found out that one of my classmates' mothers received help from my grandmother years to get back on her feet. And I knew that they struggled, but I never knew my grandmother helped get them out of that struggle. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, thank you so much for your note online on the guest book. I really appreciated hearing that and knowing your story as far as how you're connected to my grandmother and how you knew her in life. But that's always what I've strived to be is, if not as good of her as her, at least half that. Because being so close to her growing up, we used to jam out to the 50s and 60s, mind you. So
Okay.
I used to do that in the kitchen still, just to keep her in spirit.
Yeah, with the broom and the mop.
Sometimes. And I know I don't see a lot of people nowadays buying aprons and like wearing dresses around the house unless you're like a homemaker. And like the homesteaders, I see homesteaders do that still, but not modern culture, I guess, does that. And every so often I'll do that if I'm really in the mood because I feel like that brings like that whole decade alive at home.
Yeah.
And then the girls even jam out.
And that's awesome. That is awesome. Wow. Wow. That just really touched my heart. Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
I brought up the volunteer fire. I brought up the volunteer.
Yes, I did want to touch on that. So, y'all listen. Miss Ma'am, not only has she been crocheting for 17 years, and you see little ones, she's got her little ones at home, and she's a volunteer firefighter. How did you get into that? How did you get into that? I know, baby. Tell me something good. My goodness.
So, how I got into it, there was another ex-boyfriend in high school, actually my first boyfriend I ever had in high school. I was still a freshman, and there was one day I said, what does it take to get into the fire department? And immediately I was shut down. I was like, no, you can't do that. Like, all of us are guys. We've never had a woman there before. So I kind of lost interest then. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And funny enough, the boyfriend at the time, his dad and my dad were classmates in high school. So I told my dad, I was like, why are they shutting me down? Like, they know you. You're a good guy. Why can't I get involved in this? So never thought about it again. And then a few years ago, now husband got me to join in 2019, actually June 2019, funny enough. And the borough fire department, because I live in Derry Borough, they let me join. It turns out I found out there was one other active female member, and they had other members previously that came and left for other reasons. But they kept me around even when I was pregnant with my two girls, because they knew that with my family's background, I'm not stupid enough to get on a truck 6 months pregnant.
Right.
I stayed in the radio room in case they needed to call back to the station and say, hey, we need another truck. Is there anybody available? Or I just fill out the paperwork for each call. And then I just sit there and wait till I got back to go home, because I wasn't walking across a busy highway to get back to my house.
Right.
So they took very good care of me. And I was actually still a member of that department 2 years ago when I lost my grandmother Christmas Eve, and they made sure I was okay, because I did not let myself go on calls for at least 8 months. After a while, mentally, I could have, but at the same time, I didn't want to risk seeing a vehicle accident with somebody bleeding and then immediately get triggered. So I just avoided it for however long is necessary.
Absolutely.
And mentally, I've gotten better since then, of course, where I'm not having as many episodes, getting upset or nothing, just talking about her. As you could tell earlier, I was happy to talk about her because
Yeah.
it's the best thing to do. And we had a gun bash. I forget if it was February or March.
Gun bash?
Yeah, so we have one of the local gun shops come in and they'll raffle off guns, print out like a cash ticket, and like every 15 minutes we'll raffle off a gun. And if the numbers that we use in the bingo machine come out, if you have those numbers on your ticket, you'll get 2 or 3 numbers, then you get that gun for that drawing.
Wow. I'm coming to your place.
But so after that gun bash, everyone's drinking.
Hi, sweetheart. What are you doing? Hi there.
You're eating your peanut butter.
So cute. Really? You have beautiful eyes. Look.
But anyway, so we had a gun bash. After a gun bash, I stayed to help clean because my husband walked home since we're only 2 blocks away from the community center. But he walked home. I stayed after. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll help clean up, put tables away. And then I already knew, like, everyone drinks at the gun bashes because we get kegs of beer that you can get, like pitchers or even just a cup full, however many trips you want to take throughout the event. But some of our members were drinking, and I don't necessarily agree with it, especially if you're an officer, because you should be representing the department to high standards, in my opinion. And we're done cleaning. Everyone's hanging out until 1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. and I'm still standing there like, why am I here? Well, one of the officers started making comments about one of the other members' wives. I didn't agree with it. I could tell some of the other members didn't. And I said, I'm going home. I brought it up to my husband. I said, hey, you've been talking about going to the township fire department. Can I talk?
Oh, my goodness. You have a lot to say.
Yeah, you do.
What is your favorite toy?
Cars.
Cars? You are a girl after my own heart. You like cars? I love cars. What's your favorite color?
Me?
Yeah, I know that's right. Yay!
But so after that gun bash, I talked to my husband. I said, hey, this is what happened. I said, a lot of the other members did not agree with it, but they didn't say anything either. They didn't confront him. And so we came to the decision that we were going to leave the department and go to the township fire department that we're currently with. And reasoning for me to leave, other than that situation, was the fact that those guys knew I was having issues with my grandfather. And even guy who was saying those comments and things, he knew about it more than anyone else. He knew more details, and you had 50s and 60s music playing in the background off the TVs. And I said, I'm done. You act like you care, but then you're saying stuff around me and I can't handle it. I've told you before. If I look like I'm down, don't say nothing to trigger worse issues.
Don't make it worse.
So I was like, okay, I'm leaving. It's better for my health. And just really, it was a lot better in the long run to go to the township, because not only was the chief there, the man who ran the show for the house fire at my grandparents', but even before we became members, he regularly checked in with me, my dad, and my grandfather to make sure we're all doing okay. If we needed anything, they were right there. And so I kind of felt like it was necessary to kind of say, hey, I want to come over to you guys. You're taking better care of us than these guys are. Actually, just a few days ago, my husband got brand new gear from a grant that we received.
Wow. So is your husband a full-time firefighter?
He's volunteer, but he's actually in the process of applying to Montgomery County, Maryland Training Academy. He already got through the first step, that he was approved to move on to the next step, which the next step he has to take a physical test of sorts. And if he passes that, then I'm pretty sure he's in, unless there's one other step. But he's almost there to finishing out, applying and getting it. So
that's really cool. So you're happy where you're at now?
Yes. And
Good.
that all other than just asking my husband about it up front, like, hey, I want to join, it was more or less because of the way I was raised by my grandparents. And my dad actually used to work for the borough police department when he retired from the state police. And a few times he'd say, you're a woman, you can't do the same thing men can. And I said, watch me. You're telling a farm kid they can't do something. I will prove you wrong.
That's right. You telling me I can't do it is exactly what I will do, just to prove you wrong.
Yeah. So I have the caring side from my grandmother. I have the bullheadedness, I guess, from her and my grandfather.
You said caring, Karen.
Caring, like the caring person.
Caring. I thought you said I have the Karen side. I was like, oh snap. She getting ready. Wow. Okay, can you share a tip with everybody about like a tip that's has significantly like improved your crochet at some point? Maybe
So
for
really, the only thing I could think of is mindset. Like I shared about that hooded scarf I made my grandmother earlier. I kept telling myself, this isn't really good enough of an item to just give away. But when I thought back on it last night, I said, you know what? My grandmother loved that scarf. She used it more oftentimes than I probably would have. And remember, whenever I was making it, I was so nervous. Just making it in her living room in front of her. And got it done. I was like, hey, see how you like this, if it's okay. And she would smile. She was always smiling, happy, laughing even. And she was so happy to have that thinking back on it, I'm like, you know what? I need to start mentally thinking better about what I'm making. Because if I don't like it, then maybe somebody else does. So I shouldn't doubt myself.
Yeah, I think you're right. We are definitely our own worst critics.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good enough. Nothing won't be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mindset, that's a good one. That's a really good one. What do you think are some common mistakes that beginners make? And how do you think how they can avoid those mistakes?
Goals. I'm sure you've heard it before, but tension I know is one. If your tension's too tight, obviously you need to go back and maybe loosen it up or do some sort of like exercise to figure out what or how to adjust, whether it's your like hook sizes, your yarn you're using for a project. And granted, that's what swatches are for in patterns. Figure out what you need to do.
Do you actually do a swatch before you make something?
Not always.
I know a lot of people don't.
No. I actually tried not too long ago. I was trying to make sweaters for my kids. I didn't even do a swatch. I was like, I'm just going to wing it. And then as I'm working through it, I'm like, this sweater's not going to fit Lucy. And I'm on the smallest size there is in this pattern. So I'll just make it for my oldest. And I still haven't finished it because I've been coming up with so many other ideas for projects that it's buried somewhere over here.
How many whips do you have going right now? Like, how many have you started and just haven't quite got around to finishing?
Probably this week is the most I've ever had. Usually try to keep no more than 2 at a time. I think I'm up to 4 because I've talked about it in some of my videos. I started a Tunisian crochet shawl that Tony made over at TL Yarn Crafts, her pattern. Haven't finished it because I don't know if I like the dusty pink yarn I'm using. So I just kind of like put a halt to it to maybe come back and figure out if I'm still
maybe you want to do it with another yarn.
And then I have the sweater for the girls. I have a market bag. I have this pattern I'm making right now. And in a video I said I'm gonna say it's done, but it really isn't. I started making my youngest sister blanket as like a graduation gift, even though she graduated last year, because I did start it last year around this time. But it's sitting in my closet, and I don't know if we want to consider this a whip or not, but I bought fabric to reupholster my dining room chairs, and that's been sitting in my closet behind me. So I have all these projects.
It's a project. It's definitely a project.
Mm-hmm. But I try to stay on top of it. If I get one done, I'm good. I try not to start another one.
I live my life in squirrel moments, and to be honest, I am so not good at that. I'm not. I think I've asked you, how has crochet influenced your life outside of the crafting aspect of it?
That's a good one. I want to say patience is definitely a big one. it also helped, even just growing up. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And of course, I just said my youngest just graduated high school. So, me being 26, my youngest sister is going to be 19 this September as well. I always stayed to myself in my bedroom when I was home. And how that worked, I always did my barn chores, my house chores, and cleaned my room, did my homework, and then I'd go right back into crocheting or knitting, whatever I was doing at the time. And I'd throw my earbuds in, listen to my iPod Touch I had, and just keep to myself, because that's how I stayed out of trouble, being the oldest.
Yeah,
I
no,
did what
that's
I was supposed to do and just did my own thing. But definitely helped, because there were some periods of time where I dealt with a lot of uncertainties. For instance, in middle school, my brother was in 6th grade, and his math teacher happened to be my math teacher I had in 6th grade, but she was also my homeroom teacher. And an incident happened where her husband ended up raping and killing her. And my father had the case because he was working state police at the time. And it was very hard on my mother, myself, and my siblings, but more so my brother, I feel, because he was struggling with his class. And he was a straight A student through most of his career. And for him having autism, that was a big deal to have those straight A's.
absolutely
So when that happened, I struggled with whether or not it was even worth staying here on Earth, because you had my brother struggling, and I tried helping him with his math class homework, and then my dad was dealing with his struggles. My mother would drop us off at my grandparents to go check in on my dad, or just to have alone time with him if needed. And my grandparents always watched the news. They never skipped it, because that's how my grandfather knew when to cut the hay or when to load manure. And so every time I saw her face on TV, I'd be sitting there knitting or even doing my homework. And then I would run upstairs, slam a bedroom door, and just cry. And my grandmother would come upstairs following me and just hold me. And as I said earlier, she was really the only supportive person, I feel, for the whole family. My mother wasn't very compassionate as compared to my grandmother. But I remember a few times I'd be pulled into the office, because there were just a few times where I'd have a school laptop and I'd just type in, how to da 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 da. And then like an hour later, they'd flag it, call me down. And I remember my parents coming in through the door. I'm like, oh no, now we're going to start this. And my dad would be screaming and yelling, just have his voice raised, because that's his persona for being a state trooper, always uptight and like, ready for anything. And he threatened me a few times to take me to the mental hospital where my grandmother retired from. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good, thanks. I don't want to go there. And basically learned to just shut that idea out of my head. Didn't go to a therapist or nothing. I just shut that idea out of my head, and I haven't had issues since. But then, of course, the struggle with losing my grandmother has been rough. I've had people checking in on me and so forth. So the crocheting really kind of takes me to my own place where I don't have to think about anything else. I'm able to just focus in on that and ignore everything outside, and helped me keep going. And it still does to this day, because if I have screaming kids, I do this.
That's right. Mom, 2, 3, 4.
Yes. I actually had to do that earlier today. My kids were yelling at me, hey, she took this. I'm like, 8, 9, 10, hold on.
Yep. Just start counting louder. Like, don't interrupt me while I'm counting.
Or lately, I've been crocheting down on my sofa, and I let the girls have the morning to watch like Paw Patrol or Spidey and his friends on YouTube. And then I'll change it over to my Crochet Channels account and just start watching everyone else who crochets. And I'll just sit there, and some days they're okay playing by themselves and not being in front of the TV. Other days they're screaming matches, and I have to yell and be like, hey, what's going on? Is anybody hurt? Why are you screaming? If you're not hurt, stop screaming.
Why are we being so loud? I don't understand.
But yeah, so it helped me get through some tough times and just figuring out what I need to do, how to do it. So I just kind of keep going at it, because it's something I'm good at. I can't get told I'm not good at it. I can't have somebody take it away from me, essentially.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that on a deep level. Yes. And it is something very mentally calming about it. It's
I
like,
actually had a friend we lived with for a short time. She started getting into crochet because she was going to a therapist and they recommended that she learn to crochet because it would help with her anger issues and
yeah,
get her to calm down. And it did. Tensions were tight at first, but over time her tension loosened and so did her anger
yeah.
issues. They just like
She,
came down.
yep. And it's easy, like with anger issues, and not that I'm telling on myself or anything,
Well,
but anger issues, stress. I can
mm-hmm.
tell when I'm stressed more so because I think there are times when we don't even realize what's going on in here because
Yes.
of everything, like kicks the crap out of you. And sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
don't realize what's going on. But when you're crocheting and you realize, like, and I've done it, and I'm trying to get the hook back into the stitch and I can't because my tension's so freaking tight, I have
No.
to sit there and, okay, because I didn't even realize I was so uptight. Okay, Marty, relax, relax, relax.
Yeah.
So the crochet helps me to relax because I'm freaking high
Mm-hmm.
strung. Not that anybody notices,
Yeah. And
but yeah, it helps a lot.
even so during the day, if the first thing I do is sit on the couch and start crocheting, I'll be stuck there all day. So what I try to do is as I'm getting my girls breakfast, I'll say, okay, what in the kitchen needs done while I'm out here? And I'll just knock that out. Then if I'm done with the kitchen, I'll sit down for maybe half an hour to an hour and do my crochet and then be like, okay, now what needs done? What's the next most important thing
Do
that
you
could be
have to
done?
set yourself an alarm?
Not necessarily. I try to like, even if I finish watching a YouTube video, I usually use that as my, okay, let's do something.
That's right.
Because not too long ago, I think I looked up something where it's you sit for so long and your spinal cord, everything starts to fuse.
Yeah,
Because I'm
you get
also a
stuck.
caretaker on the side for somebody who worked with my grandmother. And she's been having issues. And she told me her spine is fused in certain areas to where they can't operate on her for her pain she's having in her hip and one of her nerves. So she's been living with this pain. Medications aren't helping. She can't do surgery, but it's because she's always sitting around because she has nothing to do. She's in her late 70s now, so she can't really go outside much because she's hardly able to walk. But
Right.
I don't want to be that person that has those issues. So I'm trying to stay active because that's what I was always doing as a kid was being active, being out in the barn or even the garden.
So you garden too.
So my family farm that my parents are living on, the 118 acres, we have an orchard that sits below the farmhouse where my relatives used to dump their garbage back in the day. It was just a thing that happened, I guess, because we found broken bits of dishes, some of which should never have been broken because they would have sold for a good penny. We've found horse teeth back there because before tractors, they had horses, draft horses.
Yes.
And so my great grandfather used to grow nothing but potatoes in the orchard. And we still use that plot, but I expanded it out this year so I could do potatoes on one side of it. But then closer to apple trees, I had onions, green beans, had some cut flowers in there to kind of help deter the deer because of the green beans being so many. I had zucchini in there and some other squash. Tried planting a tomato plant because I did like a cutting off of my tomatoes I have here at the house. I have too many tomatoes. I have Better Boys and Romano tomatoes and Early Girls. And the oldest plant I have is still going, while the other ones I have hardly picked from yet because they're still maturing. And then I've got broccoli and more onions here. Did some garlic. What else was there? More green beans. I did carrots for the first time this year, and they did pretty well. All I did was lay some hay down on top of them, and they grew pretty quick. So this year was a little more of like an experiment with some crop, but then I grew stuff that I'm familiar with, like the green beans and the tomatoes. So
That's really cool. I want a garden so bad. I'm a little bit jealous. No, a lot actually, because
well,
yes,
I've
I don't like vegetables unless they're fresh picked. I like
yes.
to be able to go out. My mom had a greenhouse in her backyard
Ooh,
and it was chock full of stuff. And every time I went over there, I was raiding the garden.
aw,
Forget the fridge. I'm raiding the
yeah.
garden. fresh green beans right off the vine. Same thing with sweet peas and carrots and just pretty much
Oh yeah.
anything you grow. I love it, love it, love it.
Well, I noticed my family, the way we have the farm set up, there's more than one owner on the deed. So when my great grandmother passed, my grandfather inherited her portion. And now that my grandmother passed, he now has her portion. So instead of 4 owners, now we're down to 3. But my dad eventually is going to add myself and my siblings, unless he decides to leave someone out of it for his own reasons that he feels necessary. But this past season, I've been busting my ass to keep both my garden and the orchard garden going, because I was even told if I do the orchard garden, I'm the only one. No one else is going to have time to work on it. So even if I have to take the kids with me, if my husband's not home, they get to roam free as long as they're not down near the creek.
That's right.
And they've been learning to actually help, which is amazing because
I
I don't
bet they enjoy it.
So
They probably enjoy it. That's a skill.
yeah.
A skill that a lot of people don't have anymore.
I've actually had the youngest, who was up here earlier, she's taken the hose off of me, the shovels, everything, every tool. She's ripped out of my hand. It said, my turn. And then I have to lightly grab it and say, okay, let me show you what needs knocked out or what we need to shovel to move. And she just goes at it.
She's a natural. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. She's spunky too.
Yeah. But in that sense, too, I'm keeping Grandma alive because she enjoyed gardening like nothing else. She loved being outside, and that was her peaceful place.
That's really awesome, Emily. That is really awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and unfortunately, I really enjoyed talking to you. You are very interesting. You have a lot going on, girl. A lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all do not forget, go show Emily some love. Check out her videos. Again, I will link that in the description below. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go? Thank you for agreeing. I'm glad you're willing to share your story.
You say bye.
Really? Bye.